introduce you guys.
Me and Mike?
Yeah.
It's the first time I'm meeting you, Mike. Nice to meet you.
I haven't been invited. I would like to go.
Oh, you're not invited.
No, we haven't
Nope.
been invited.
Not going to happen. Mike, you're not invited.
What is Bill doing? Is he selling popcorn or what's he doing?
That's a good idea.
Last year, Bill Davis pulled up a chair to the buffet. I don't think that was fair.
It was guaranteed disappointment.
Don't worry, Sam. It's all going to be fine.
I was like, who is this person? We're going to have a cover band there this year.
We are?
A wedding cover band.
No, we're making a killing on this, guys.
Yeah.
They got the format right. The only thing that we're doing is we're adding a couple new wrinkles to things.
So this guy, Sam Messman at Lumiforge, is going to start.
You may want to come late. We got big events Monday and Tuesday night also.
You do have big events Monday and Tuesday? I don't think you will, Bill. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Final Cut Pros Saturday Meetup. Today we're going to talk about the brand new Final Cut Pro Legacy Media update that just came out, 10.4.6. There seems to be some people that are still upset about it. So we have, we're going to talk about it.
What? People are upset about a change that Apple has made? I can't believe that.
Well, who is this? This is Bill Davis. Now, I always have to ask this. Is this Bill Davis from California or the Bill Davis that just joined Apple?
I should probably come up with some. Bill Davis, West Side. So I'm on the left coast.
So this is Bill Davis from California because the other Bill Davis joined Apple.
Yeah, he's much better looking than I am.
Well, I don't. I've never had you two side by side, even though I wanted to do that. I wanted to have you both on the same chat, and I would say, I got Bill Davis today. Which one? Well, both of them.
Yeah.
But now it's too late.
That sometime.
Now it's,
that's right. Well,
now it's too late because he's with Apple now.
Yeah, that's what I understand. And good. From everything that people have said, he's a great guy. So I'm happy he's raising the profile of Bill Davis's globally.
Absolutely. So in the center here we have Isaac Terranez. Is that the way you say?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Terranez, it's all
Terranez.
good.
Terranez. That's it.
Last name.
Terranez. There you go. Terranez.
Yeah.
And
how's it going,
you
guys?
are. You're not exactly bi-coastal, but you're
No.
New York City and Knoxville, Tennessee. What an interesting combination of two cities.
Yes.
Now
yes.
you were in New York the last time I checked, but you said like a month ago you joined Knoxville somehow.
Yeah, a few months ago, family and I we moved down to East Tennessee, but still have a good base of work there in New York. So yeah, there's truth in advertising there.
The truth in
Here's
advertising.
all you need to learn. Get out of my way, y'all.
It's gonna happen. No, it's gonna happen organically.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about Isaac is he has the perfect initials. His name, IT, and that's what he does.
It's
There
like
you go.
it's like I was destined.
It's like you were destined. You didn't change your name to fit the IT, did you?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'm glad you organically discovered it. That's super awesome.
No, I've been, because I was looking at your website earlier.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's how I discovered you were in Tennessee. I'm like, wow. First off, you don't have a Southern accent, so I know you're not from there, are you?
Oh no, not at all. Yeah, no, we just decided on a new adventure, and so far it's good. Yeah, East Tennessee's an awesome place.
That's fantastic.
Everybody says it's beautiful down there. I don't know. Are you technically the South?
I think
Tennessee
so.
is, sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because I live in Maryland, and Maryland is the Mason-Dixon line.
Okay, so he's south of you. He's
the Pennsylvania-Maryland line is the Mason-Dixon line. We're right on the border.
Okay, there you go.
Okay,
there you go.
So, not that we worried about that too much, but
see, kids, history matters.
Speaking of history, so we had an interesting week this week. On Monday, Apple introduced new iPads. On Tuesday, they introduced the new, they're not the AirPod 2s, but they're a revamp of the original AirPods.
Yeah.
Then on Wednesday, was Wednesday Final Cut Pro Day? or Thursday. No, Thursday was Final Cut Pro
Thursday.
Day.
Thursday.
What did they enter? Oh, the iMacs came. I'm sorry, the iMacs came out on Tuesday. The AirPods came out on Wednesday, something like that. So each day they introduced a new present
Yes.
for everybody. Now, I've been talking about the fact that there's been no official Apple presentation listed for NAB, that they will probably sneak out this Legacy Media update before NAB to diffuse any expectations of a major update.
That could be part of the reason. Also, the more I investigate this, the more I realize how important it will be to a few classes of users. And if they don't get ahead of this transition, and so I just think Apple's doing their due diligence in one respect. You know, if nobody talks about this and the people who it's going to affect substantially don't know about it, the hue and cry on the back end, if and when they make their next big OS rev, is going to the whole world will light up and everybody will be screaming and nuts. And at least this way they'll be able to say, look, we try to be as diligent as possible about telling you that for some of you, not for all of you, but for some of you, these are going to be changes that are going to be really annoying.
You mean people actually say that?
No. Everybody's always happy. Whatever a tech company changes, they're happy to accept it.
Well, you're right. Especially Apple. Apple especially gets...
Well, Apple's, one of the largest companies on the planet. And they affect a
Absolutely.
lot of people. So, yeah, they are the biggest target. But that doesn't mean that everybody else, from Adobe through Avid, through Blackmagic, through everybody, isn't infected with this same thing. You've changed what I depend on, and I'm mad at you. And this one has the potential for some users to, wait, what do you mean I can't go back and use that clip anymore? I forgot about it. It was sitting there in the background, and I've ignored it for 5 years, but I need it now. And you're telling me I can't have it? Oh, my God. The internet will light up with acrimony.
It seems to me that most of the people that are complaining are Avid people because they got hit pretty hard with a bunch of media. Isaac, can you talk about that specifically? I know there's some legacy Avid media that's been hit that's not going to be available.
Yeah. So if you are referring to that list of incompatible codecs
Right.
That are featured there in that tech note or that support note, yeah, I think they're just wondering if there's still some, I think, confusion about are they being left behind or what does the future hold for them? And even though Avid has issued an article, a knowledge base article on that, last updated December 10th of last year. They talk about that specifically. They walk people through what that means, why this is happening. And it's not that the blame is shifted, but it's like the platform is changing. And now, there's no more QT-Kit, those underlying, underpinnings of what people knew as QuickTime. And AV Foundation isn't being opened up, to extend like QT-Kit was. So that means it's going to fall on every developer, including Avid, to make that available to their users. And it's still kind of like like we keep talking about, but why? It's like because it's the future.
Right. Right. I was downstairs this last week, and I have a storage room downstairs where I keep, old boxes and things, and I came across my Power Mac G5 box. Not even a Mac Pro box. Power Mac G5 box. And right on the box, it says 64-bit architecture. Now, how long ago was that? 10, 12, 13 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and those are with the PowerPC processors,
Right, exactly. Before they went with Intel. That's how long ago. And it said on the box, I got a picture. It says 64-bit architecture.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so they've been, Apple's been looking at this for a long time, and there's that deck I keep referencing from a WWDC in 2013 where they said, this is it. We've marked it for deprecation, which I know it's fancy programmer or developer speak for. It's going to die.
Sure.
We just don't know when it's going to die,
Well, yeah, and not only that, they've given us a year, this last iteration where they're telling us about it. They started telling us last year that a year from now, this is going to happen. It doesn't seem to really help with some people. They're just stuck on the fact, here's what they're stuck on. They're stuck on the fact, well, I'm saying stuck. I'm just saying this is the way they feel. That if Avid can do these codecs and play these media files, there's no reason why Final Cut Pro can't. Technically, that's true. Part of the tech note that came through was that Apple said third-party developers may continue to offer compatibility with some formats by building support directly in their apps, which apparently that's what Avid's going to be doing.
But see, Richard, I think the big problem is that doesn't really address user classes. And this stuff has been around for so long that those of us who were there really early, I mean, if you've been doing digital computing, and particularly video, since the early days of the DV changeover,
sure,
you could, there's so many codecs that came and went, and so many that are so old. I mean, you might have files sitting there in the bottom of your hard drive that are in old Og Vorbis or other really bizarre, they had their place in a moment in history and then they went away. And depending on how you use this stuff, because if you're exclusively a professional video person and you're always updating and you're keeping track of everything, then you probably already understand all this stuff. But there's a whole bunch of other classes of people out there. And you get everybody from somebody who's just been in this a couple of years who doesn't really have much of a problem with this because the machines they bought were new. They didn't use a lot of these ancient codecs. I mean, they probably never watched a lot of Flash video.
Sure.
And then that user is way different from somebody who, at some point 15 years ago said, I'm going to be the king of cat videos and I'm going to collect cat videos from everywhere on the internet. And they had cat videos in so many codecs and so many wrappers, some of which are still alive and some of which the developers are out of business. And you've got this huge swath. And, Apple's hope is to get them all happy so that they're all okay if and when, as you say, they pull the last pin on the whole QuickTime environment.
Well, is it just 32-bit? Is that the breakdown of what's going to be supported and what's not going to be supported?
I don't. You know what? I honestly can't say if that's a question for me, but I would say that's a large part of it. I would say it's a large part, and again, it's also the approach that if there's something that's very, very specific for that environment,
right,
like AvidDNX HD, AvidDNX HR, then it's like Apple saying, if I understand this correctly, that's on the developer now to implement the best way to decode that. Or as we read there in a moment, then and I guess they're applying those rules to themselves. It's not like they're saying they're above their own law per se, but then Apple will provide, say, a native decoding solution rather for our environment, for Final Cut Pro.
Yeah.
Am
I right in understanding this is really about the processor grabbing chunks of data on the very micro level, whether it's going to grab 32 or 64 bits at a time. So if they wrote their entire API or their entire program to expect only those 32-bit chunks, and now Apple's saying, no, everybody has to use 64-bit chunks, the developer has the ability in most cases to go back and say, we got to write some code to make sure that when the processor sees this thing, it doesn't fool it into thinking that it can't talk to it or use it or understand it.
Yeah, and and that's everything from, that's not just in post, but I have clients who are still using Office 2011 and they're getting that warning now. I use an app by Stunt Software for time tracking, and I'm getting hit with that now. I reached out to them and they said, "Yep, we're working on that version that's not going to give you that flag and it's going to be usable beyond Mojave or whatever the next version is where they decide to go 64-bit."
Right.
Well, the OS is already 64-bit, isn't it?
Yes, but it still supports 32-bit apps.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Now it's going to be all you must be have a 64-bit app in order to.
It's kind of Apple saying we're not going to slow down the computer processing in order to take care of you old legacy folks who have these old files in old codecs. You just at some point you got to say, I surrender.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there are some other, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school here, but this kind of sparked something in my mind about at least on the Windows side, with QuickTime 7 being unsupported, there were, security problems associated with that. And I think with some of the Qt kit stuff now, that might be a problem too. So it's like you strip away that, there's no, that security threat doesn't exist. Plus you have the performance element like we've been talking about here. The old stuff has to go away. And it's, again, people in certain circles have heard that for a while, and now you move forward.
It's kind of Apple saying, clean out your garage.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you're carrying too much old stuff.
It's interesting. So do we allow the vast majority of people who this is not going to affect be manipulated by the small amount of people that are going to still be using this stuff? No. Apple has been telling us for years and years. For the OS, I think they've been telling us for over 10 years that they're transitioning to 64-bit only. People keep saying that Final Cut Pro is doing this. Well, not really. It's really the OS.
Right.
So and at the philosophical wide level, it's really a company asking the entire world, is the tasty juice going forward the stuff from the past that we're holding on to, or is it the stuff coming in the future that can transform and continue this curve of acceleration has been remarkable. I mean, the development of these tools, I was talking to somebody just the other day about what it was like even 5 years ago and the difference between 5 years ago and what I can do at my desktop on my edit rig today versus what I could do back then. And it's transformatively powerful. I get stuff done that used to take me 5 and 6 days. I get it done in an afternoon now because of these tools. So I understand that people don't want that change, and they want to be able to click and open and put in their timeline the file yesterday or today that they put in 6 months or 6 years ago, and that would be nice. But you can't really hold off that push to the future merely to take care of the past. I think that's what Apple's signaling brightly here.
So I had a question all along when they first announced this Legacy Media, and my question was, after you upgrade, since they're giving this feature to Final Cut Pro right now, okay? It's Final Cut Pro. It wasn't introduced in the OS, this feature, because the OS was not updated. It's Final Cut Pro was updated, iMovie was updated, Compressor was updated, Motion was updated. So my question was, okay, they're giving us this feature in Final Cut Pro. Is it going to continue to identify and convert legacy media once the new OS comes in? Okay, now the answer is no. Because in the tech note, it says, after you upgrade your Mac OS, the option to convert the incompatible files will no longer be available. So that's very specific, that's what's going to happen. Because I just questioned myself. So the interesting thing is they're giving us this feature for Final Cut Pro now, and they're taking it away in the next update. That doesn't happen that often.
No, and you would think that Apple, as mindful as they are of these kind of things, I mean, they want to keep moving forward, but they've said, we can't do what we want to do if we don't make this change. That's how I read it. And, you're going to separate the world into, I think, kind of three camps of people. There are the people who just say, I'm going to not change anything and see what happens. And there's a goodly number of those people who are going to be angry somewhere down the road when the new OS is shipped. There's going to be another group that's kind of a little more, okay, I heard this is happening. It matters to me. I'm going to be diligent. I'm going to go through and I'm going to touch all those old video files and I'm going to look at them. And I'm going to search all my hard drive archives, however many there might be, for flash video, for projects that may incorporate some flash video, and I'm going to go get those all converted. I'm going to do my due diligence. And then there's going to be another group of people who just kind of go, oh, well, what I need to do now is I need to freeze a machine and a system. And I'm going to stick this laptop in the closet. It's going to have a pre-change out of this OS, and I'm going to keep my translation, apps and things on that machine. And worst comes to worst, it's going to be a day of going in and transcoding video because I finally realized I need that stuff that can't be done. And so those three types of people, and, Apple doesn't want to say, hey, don't sell off your old laptop, keep it around just in case you have a codec mess and want to fix it. You will be able to do that. And if that's your preference, you don't have to freak too much about this.
Well, and there's a couple approaches that I think of, like you were saying, Bill, this reminds me of Rosetta. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
That was, yeah.
Sure.
And there was that 10.7, 10.7 came and it was like, okay, well, now you have to make a decision. And I think it's the same approach, and it was effective. I mean, I oversaw a post-production facility, and it wasn't a horrible pain. I mean, we kept one around, and if you're in post-production, you're kind of used to that idea that you're going to keep this, hermetically sealed workstation, particularly if you're using with certain editing, environments. So.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Put plastic seat covers over the 2007 rig.
Well, I actually have my original MacBook Pro, and I swear it's an inch thick. It seems like it. It's one with the the CD player, DVD player, and everything. I did put a flash drive in it, a SSD drive in it years ago, but I've had that all this time because it wasn't worth it to sell it.
Right, and that's a perfectly rational strategy. I have an old laptop. It's probably about 7 years old now, and I leave it in there. And every once in a while, I stick a power cord in it, and I charge the battery up, and I make sure it boots. And it's frozen 7 years ago. And if I have to go back and something becomes incompatible, you can do that. But I think Apple's also saying, this is not the right thing to force people to keep an old machine and not sell it off. So that has to be a strategy for one type of user who can archive hardware at an era to make sure for compatibility. Then you got those other two groups. I'm going to change everything and make sure that everything going forward is transcoded and I'm going to be clean and clear. And then there are the people who are just going to ignore the whole thing, la, 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 la. And, many of them probably won't ever be damaged by this. I mean, if you don't have to go back and get that old file and convert it, you're still golden. But there's going to be that niche in the middle. Well, they ignored the transition and they didn't transcode the old files. And they're going to be on the internet in another year and a half screaming about, I can't open my files.
Well, first off, I'm glad Apple gave us this update. Right?
Oh, yeah.
To me, it's a gigantic benefit to be able to identify and convert rather than just before it was just identify and that's it. So now this is a positive. This is absolutely a positive that Apple gave us this update. It's also, to me, since I'm paying attention to things that Apple, have a tendency to do, I'm glad they did this prior to NAB because it alleviates the idea that there's going to be an update for NAB.
That's been a really interesting thing, Richard. I mean, this transition, we never used to get that, right?
Yes.
Announcements would be made the first 1 or 2 days of the NAB cycle. And now it seems like Blackmagic was out really early saying, here's what we're going to do.
It's crazy.
And then,
Frame.io did the same thing.
Exactly. So for some reason, the marketing and just production parts of these large software companies have said, I don't know what they've said. Maybe it's that it's too easy to get lost in the shuffle of hundreds of announcements the first couple of days at NAB. And that takes our mind off of, because all we're doing is asking questions about what we released yesterday.
Right.
And we have other things to talk about. That may be one reason. Yeah.
No, I think exactly. It alleviates, it gets rid of that pressure to do it on Monday morning or whenever. Yeah. It's out in advance. Now, here's the thing with like Blackmagic. They introduced new cameras. They introduced an update to Resolve, but they said a bigger update is coming at NAB for Resolve. So that's interesting. So they're getting rid of a lot of stuff, but not 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how the different companies approach these things. And I kind of have a little sympathy for, you got these companies that do hardware and software, and they have one set of requirements. And you've got these other companies, the Avids and Adobes, who are primarily software. They don't really make a ton of hardware. I mean, Avid used to be in the hardware business a good little bit, but they're not so much anymore. And I just think they have to think about this differently depending on which way you're going.
No, absolutely. So everybody knows that people have a much stronger inclination to post negative comments on the internet.
Really?
Rather than positive comments. So we're going to hear from the small amount of people that are going to be affected by this, and they're not going to do one of the I don't want to dismiss them, okay, but they're not going to do one of the things they can do to work around this. One thing they're not going to do, they're not going to wag the dog. They're not going to change Apple, okay? That's one thing that they're not going to do. So they should do one of these things. They should keep an older machine around with an older OS. If they have a machine that works now, make a bootable clone of their OS and their software that they can boot into at any time in the future and access these files properly. Don't update the OS in the fall. That's another thing you can do. I mean, Isaac, you might be able to tell me this. I keep hearing that a lot of Avid systems are years behind updating the OS.
Oh my, yes. You know what? There is an editor that's part of the Avid Customer Association, Chris Bove, and he runs alwaysediting.com, and he has and and I think he still does actively maintains a matrix or table of this version of Media Composer plus this version of Mac OS, and maybe even particular OpenIO drivers, Blackmagic, Matrox back in the day.
Sure.
And you're going to be okay. But boy, it's hard. It's hard to keep that cohesiveness once, the .xx comes out of that next version of the editor, and then, now everybody has to, comply.
You're right, exactly.
So yes, the answer is absolutely yes. Yes.
I have huge respect for those guys who have always treated computing like hot rodding, where we're going to componentize and build our hot rod out of our stuff with our, this is everything I want specifically, no matter whom it comes from. And then on the other side, there's the Apple approach, which has always been, here's the box. Most everything runs on it. The box depends on, how fast these certain subsystems of your software run, but it's been pretty consistent. And I think that's just a difference in how people are wired.
No,
you want to buy the car, or you want to hot rod the car.
No, I think particularly in this realm of post-production, I mean, there's a couple of things that you're going to probably hear me say if you talk to me long enough. One is that post-production, IT and post-production is not the same as regular IT. And it's all about making sure that it's like, you're in the business of now maintaining a garage full of Lamborghinis, and you can't just buy, the aftermarket stuff. You have to buy these parts. And that's, I think, where a lot of user frustration stems from when you have that. But then you have the other side of it where people frame that freedom as that's what makes it so great. But it's like, but if all I want to do is sit down and start playing my piano, I don't want to worry about, is this key ivory and that key, PVC or whatever, I just want to know that I can play my piano.
Right. And honestly, I think this is fair because this is how it grew up. Remember, all of us probably here have been editing long enough to remember the day when you would buy a brand new system and it could barely chug through whatever footage you were trying to throw into it. And any single glitch, adding the third track of video would cause everything to slow down to a painful point. And one thing that has changed, I was talking to somebody about this just the other day on one of the boards, literally now, this is kind of a solved thing. The idea of running video through a consumer grade or slightly higher than consumer grade thing is kind of like so what? They can all do it. And they all do it really efficiently and really well. So it's not, if you don't get the Granite Digital bus on your hard drive, it's never going to pass enough to keep up with your video rate, and you will fail to edit successfully. That stuff is thankfully part of the history now.
Yes, unless you still use certain editing environments, then that still applies. Yeah, and that's been, I think, one of the tough things. You hear all these people on the boards complaining that I'm dropping frames. I can't do this. It won't get my, it's 24 hours to render out a little thing. And other than the fact that they should take neat video off of it, you get to the point where you say,
you can keep throwing faster and faster and really bespoke hardware at this to solve the thing. Or maybe you'll be lucky and one of the code changes will come through in either the OS or the drivers, the GPU or something. The GPU will get so fast that it obviates the need for all of that.
Yeah.
And now GPA A and GPA B are slightly different, but it's whether it takes you 3 seconds or 5 seconds, both of which are utterly acceptable for most working people.
Right.
It's not, I need to do it in 10 minutes, not an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Which was a deadline killer in our days.
No, absolutely. Remember, we used to have third-party cards in order to do video, either FireWire or something else before the Mac had FireWire.
And those of us who remember that are the ones I think in most danger from this change, because we're the guys with those archives full of all that work from back then when the Kodak landscape was the Wild West.
Well, and there's something to be said for it. I mean, I can think of hard drives at one particular house I used to work at. Those projects and the media were archived, and man, I mean, I just don't remember the last time they were open. So It could just be a matter of they go off into, the flotsam and jetsam of data that just never gets referenced again,
I did a gig once, probably about 7 years ago, and oddly, I'm doing it here in San Diego again this year, and it was taking in the local Emmy award-winning things for the show that they're doing when they give away the local Emmys. And so you've got all these news stations, big and small. You've got all these producers, and they're all feeding me files. And the number of files that I got that first time, it just astonished me. I was getting stuff on just text transfers that were video files to go in the show reel.
Oh, yeah.
Going, my God, I've never seen some of these codecs. Some of them would come in, it was just a string. There wasn't even a header on it. I couldn't even look at it and find out what the codec was.
Wow.
And I remember I had like 10 translation things, and I was like, thank God Handbrake will open this one. Thank God something else will open this one. It was a nightmare. And so that stuff is still out there, and those people who deal with all those odd little files, I think, are going to they're the ones most at risk. If you want to go back and pick up those weird codecs that you've been collecting or that have been coming in from odd, in this case, it was like a small TV station in Des Moines or Reno or something like that. Yeah, that could have been a weird codec. They just sold a system, and it wasn't one of the big four. Yeah. And it was using a weird thing. It worked fine for them, so they kept doing it for 8 years.
So let me pull this up here real quick. I don't think you're going to see it, but it says these are some of the files, media formats affected by the transition to 64-bit technology, and the ones people seem to be upset about. I don't think it's Flash, right?
No.
Well, but there's a lot of Flash hiding on websites still out there.
Yeah, but I don't think people are that concerned about Flash. So the ones people seem to be concerned about are Avid DNX HD and DNX HR, Avid DV. That's interesting. Avid DV, DV100 are affected, but if you go back, I'll go back up here, regular DV is not affected. And as a matter of fact, HDV, regular DV is not affected. This is the included that's going to work, and either is DVC Pro HD or HDV. All of those are going to be fine, but for some reason, Avid version of DV is going to be a problem. I don't know why, but those seem to be the main ones. I'm not sure about Cineform.
Yeah. I suspect the reason is that back when Avid needed a format like DV, they also looked at their hardware and their arrangements, and they probably put some code in their flavor
that's exactly
of DV.
Right.
Is that what happened?
Yeah.
To do some stuff that they wanted for optimization in their system.
Right.
And that code is still hanging around, and it's not optimized when you get to the new OS.
Right.
So that's interesting that even DV, regular DV is fine.
Yeah. But that was it's like that was the vanilla ice cream, and no one put their toppings on it.
Right,
right. And the sprinkles get through the sieve, but the cherries, it ain't going to work. So it depends on what you had on top of the original base ice cream, whether you succeed or fail in this.
Well, and I think, they also had some additional compression to visually lossless, but, it was even a better version of DV that way, which you might be saying the same thing. But,
yeah, these are all great engineers, and they're working really hard to do the right thing for their customers. And they're, it's like, okay, the base is cool, but let's tune it up so our folks have something a little nicer. I don't want to stop that. Nobody should want to stop that. But this is the reflection 10 years later, 8 years later, of they tried to make it better, but in making it better, they didn't make it completely easily compatible with what it was going to have to transform itself into later.
Well, I think most Mac users appreciate the fact that Apple is transitioning to 64-bit. I mean, I am, it's not an issue with Final Cut Pro with me and the OS. I'm glad that they are transitioning. And the people, like I said, I don't want to just dismiss the people that are having problems with this specifically, even though it is a very small subset of video producers. Most people are not having a problem. I'm glad Apple is transitioning. That's a positive.
My conspiracy theory is that the entire world needs to go away from 32-bit before Final Cut Pro 10 can do dupe detection. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So that's the holy grail.
There you go. Well, that might be the trade-off right there. I have to check with Sean Lander on that.
Exactly.
Well, hey, Jets, I got to break off, but I did want to share one thing before I go. So if this adds a bit of demystification to some of this, Mac users right now in Mojave, they can go to the Apple, so this is here at the left side. They can go to Apple, and they can go to About This Mac, and they can click their system report. And then if they go scroll down on that left pane under the software series of options, maybe you know about this, but there's a legacy software subheading there. You click that, and you're going to be given a report of all your apps, not the codecs, not the media we've been talking about, but you get a sense for what apps am I going to have to be concerned about moving forward, as a Mac user.
That's a great tip.
That is a great tip.
Because
if you come out clear on that, you can forget about this whole thing. And just rock on.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a small group of people that are still going to complain no matter what. They're going to say Apple could do this and they're not going to do it. Well, they've been telling you for 10 years. I mean, you have to take care of the issue. If you sit there and complain about it and do nothing about it and think you're going to change Apple, it's not going to happen. That's unrealistic. Okay.
Yeah, and I think another fair subset of that, Richard, is that sometimes editors don't have control over that. I mean, they might be working in a shop, and the IT folks, thank you, Isaac, for being there to do this stuff. The IT folks are telling you what you can and can't do. And then if an IT guy goes and somebody comes back and they don't know the Macs as well as they know the PCs or something like that, and they're not completely aware of this, there may be still some circumstances where people are overly annoyed, and I think with justification. So I think Apple's just trying as hard as they can to get this message out as much as they can so that everybody who is a potential, I'm going to be affected by this, can do the best they can to get ahead of it.
Sure.
Yeah. And to that I say, again, initially there was that note, and it was a little bit like you were reading, tea leaves about this, incompatible media, but these updates, these documents, not only, I think you mentioned it, Richard, not only for Final Cut, but also for iMovie, and that's your consumer home movie editor.
Right.
They're outlining that in plain English. It's not really enshrouded, other than when you get to the codecs, what's that codec or what's that codec, and now somebody's going to have to do a bit of homework. But they've done a really nice job of making this accessible and not, enshrouding it in engineer speak or tech speak. And I think that's just, to me, that shows commitment, again, Apple to people and not just to tech. And that's why, that's why we enjoy it so much.
Absolutely.
Because we want to work.
So
we want to work, not work on work.
Before you go, how can people reach you on Twitter? What's your handle?
My Twitter account, and it just changed, is isaact.co, and that's spelled out. So that's ISAACT, IsaacT, DOTCO, isaact.co.
Okay.
Or my website too is isaact.co.
Not spelled out though, just the real dot.
Just the real dot. You got it.
And then one more question: are you coming to NAB?
Oh, I would love to, and I double checked with my wife Liz to see what our schedule is like, but it is seriously like it is the week of doom.
Don't check.
I don't know what's
I'm
going
gonna
on
countermand
otherwise.
that instruction as the guy who's been married for 30, 35, 36 years this year.
Just go. Just go and
Don't listen
give
to
her a
Richard. I
call and
love
tell her
Richard,
you're
but
working
don't listen
late.
to that.
Shout out to my wife, Liz. She's amazing. Yeah, for real. I wish I could, and it really does. The Faster Together lineup sounds like it just keeps getting better and better. I wish I could be there, but if not next year, then hopefully the summit. Hopefully I'll see you guys at the Creative Summit.
Oh, that'd be good, because that's when they're going to release 10.5.
Oh, oh man, that would be fantastic.
Okay, put a marker.
Hey, Bill, Richard, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Isaac, nice to see you.
Thank you very much,
care of
Isaac, for
yourself.
joining
Thank
us
you so
today.
much.
You bet. Have a good weekend. We'll see you.
Hang in there,
Bye.
Bill. We'll continue a little bit. There we go. So, yeah, you know, when I see people talking about this, and I try to, I don't want to dismiss people. You know, that I don't like that when people try to do it. So, but you get to a point where you give them, well, you have this option and you have this option. You have option 3, and you have option 4 and option 5, and they don't want to accept any of those. And they say, no, we're going to keep complaining without doing anything about it. That's what gets aggravating. But, you know.
Listen, this is going to cause some stress for some people. And when people get put under stress, you know, it's that person who is going to be working on a program in a year, and they're going to they're going to say, oh, I got that clip and it will be the perfect thing for here, and I want to drag it on my timeline, and they can't. You know, they drag it over there, they try to import, and it doesn't show up, or it's grayed out, and the frustration increases. And then at that point, you start going, why does this have to be that way? I want it to work every time, simple. And that's the goal of all these software makers, is to do that. But, you know, you're dealing, I think at that point, you're moving from the realm of factual concern to the realm of emotions. Right. And everybody has them, and I understand that. But at some point, companies, and all of these companies, it's not just Apple, they all at some point have to say, we have to do what's best for our real constituents.
Right.
You know, the millions of customers, the millions of engineers, or the thousands of engineers we have throughout our company. We have to give everybody direction. And the direction this year is QuickTime is dead.
QuickTime
get ready for it. You know, as glorious as it has been for decades now, to have something you could throw a video file on, and, you know, 99 out of 100 times it would open up and play. And you go, yep, that's good. That's what I wanted.
Yep.
Well, that's not going to be there. There's going to be a new thing there. And it still may be that 99% of the things you try to put on the Final Cut Pro 10 timeline, and for some people, 100% of the things that because those are the codecs you've been working in for the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
So everything is going to work just fine, and you're not going to have any problems at all.
And not only that, but since a third party can make an app that'll play these files and do whatever, I guarantee you a third party app will do it. Besides Avid, we know Avid's already announced that they will do it. But somebody's going to come up with an app. Philip Hodges, I'm talking to you. Somebody's going to come up with an app that'll be easy, low cost, maybe free, that'll do the conversion of these even in the next OS, because Apple said that a third party can do that.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting. I wonder if the resources aren't there on the system level to open up and parse that original file. I guess they'd have to do some kind of runtime version or something. I don't know. You know, this is beyond me. I'm not a programmer. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, Greg or Phil would know far better by 1,000 times than I ever would. But, you know, I think this is one of those times where they've got to do this. They have to do this. Well, it's not really optional.
No, exactly. And they've announced it, like I said, starting 10 years ago or longer, that the OS was transitioning, and it's now here. So
yeah, you know, but everybody also, you know, sometimes telling people too early for some kinds of people, that's worse.
Right.
Because they don't really work until the panic sets in. How many of us had high school tests that we, you know, it's like, oh no, I got time. I got time.
Some people work under pressure. I'm not. Yeah. I'm one of those people that I don't mind working under pressure if it's happened, you know, suddenly. But if you see something coming in a year down the road, and you don't do anything about it, and then at the last month you're working under pressure artificially, I don't like that at all. I always try to get the things out ahead of time as much as possible.
Yeah. And for some people, that will be because they actually were lazy and they just didn't get around to it. They had plenty of time to do it, but they didn't. Other people, it's going to be, I was just too busy. I had my job, and you're trying to get me to focus on the little green thing over here, and I got 100 boxes of crayons over here, and I'm shuffling all of those, and I can't look back over at the little green thing until the last minute, and somebody goes, okay, I got to deal with the green thing.
Yep, absolutely.
That's just how people are.
So let's talk about NAB real quick before we finish up here.
Cool.
So you are coming on to NAB, I think you said on Sunday?
Yeah, I'll be there Sunday morning, and I've got a couple of press things midday. And my normal thing is I fly in, and then I check in real quick to the room where I'm staying, and then I hop over to get my credentials and the rest of that stuff at the thing. And I've got, I think, one press briefing over there first thing, and then things are starting to fill up for Sunday now. I'm getting a lot of pings from friends from all over the world, particularly some of the international folks who will be here, saying, let's get together and have a rendezvous either before, after, and there are events. There's the post-production world stuff going on.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a pretty straight run from Sunday, maybe about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me, all the way through my departure. It's filling up real fast now.
So is the convention center floor open on Sunday?
No, not this year, although most of us have been given a little ping that next year they're going to do that. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting change. I presume they did that because they want to open up access to NAB to those who it's not a conflict with their work. And it's going to be interesting to see the nature of the crowd on Sunday. Is it going to kind of be a more consumer, I'm interested in video, but it's not my job, and I can't take my job off Monday through Friday. I got to work.
Right.
So on Sunday, it could be a real interesting crowd. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like next year, not this year, next year.
Right. And then, so Sunday, I'm going to the Future Media Concepts Content Creation Celebration. Philip Hodges is going to be there. Jeff Greenberg's going to be there. I think Steve Martin's going to be there because they're all teaching, or they have booths for the Future Media Concepts. Now, is that in the South Hall? Is where those rooms are?
Yeah, either the South Hall, or there's a bridge that connects North and South Halls that has rooms. That's where the Apple presentation was last year.
Exactly, okay.
And so it might be there. I don't know that for a fact. I do know for a fact that there's a whole series of classroom-type environment places that FMC does a lot of their stuff that is in North Hall.
Okay.
It's really beside North Hall, closer to what used to be the Hilton. I can't even remember the branding of the hotel now. So there was a big pot of classes, and most of those things, when you look at the class schedule for NAB, most of them are over there. Occasionally, you'll find some of them in that bridge set of class routes that connect Central and South Hall. I think I said North Hall. One set of classrooms in North Hall, way over by what used to be the Hilton.
Okay.
Then there's another set of classrooms on the bridge that go between Central Hall and South Hall.
Okay.
So those are the kind of...
So typically you can't check into your hotel until afternoon, right?
Right. Yeah, but in most cases, if you just go to the hotel, and if they don't have your room ready, you can tell the bell captain, just store my bags. So you can dump everything at your hotel, and then go ahead and do what you need to do. And if you can't check in until 3 or 4, then at some point you've got to get back. So this is why one of the strategies I've always employed at NAB is to find a hotel on the monorail.
Yes.
Because that means that without waiting in the cab lines and costing the money for that, or trying to figure out Uber stuff, although they have gotten a lot better at Uber and Lyft drop-offs.
Okay.
It was a problem for the first couple of years, but now they've kind of got that under control.
Well, that's good.
But at some point, you're probably going to have to go back to your hotel, check in, and then whether you come back or go to one of the evening events on Sunday just entirely depends on your schedule.
And the monorail's open till like midnight or so you can still get back after these things on Sunday night?
Yeah, you should check the monorail thing, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I would check with LasVegasMonorail.com and find out what their posted schedule is. I'm pretty sure they're going to max out the monorail schedule for NAB because it's such a large convention. But there may be a limited hour on Sunday compared to Monday through Friday, maybe.
Okay. So then Monday, there's something going on. I'm not going to mention it here because, well, I had Sam and I had Mike Horton on last week, and we talked about the Monday night event that LumaForge is hosting, but I'm not going to mention it here because they said it's not exactly public. We have a limited amount of seats, 250 seats. If you search it out, you can find it.
Yeah.
And then,
this is the legacy inheritor of what the Guru Gathering used to be. And it was pretty private the first couple of years, frankly, because Steve and his wife were paying to put it on.
Oh, they were?
And they couldn't. Well, they had some kind of sponsorship stuff going on there, but they put in huge amounts of work and put a huge investment in there.
Sure.
And so they couldn't feed, 150 people if they showed up. That's not really the way it was going to work.
Right.
And those venues, particularly the Hard Rock and things like that, I don't imagine taking over that restaurant for an evening was cheap at all.
Nothing is cheap. Sam told me that when he priced, the reason they did the rooms last year, when he priced a small on the show floor booth, it was $70,000 to $100,000 just to start.
Yeah.
That didn't include the setup.
Imagine the budget that a Sony or Panasonic or one of those large-scale international electronics vendors. Imagine what they and probably, they probably started planning the booth for 2 years from now. Changes they were going to make.
Right.
Those things. It's kind of fun if you're in NAB on Sunday and you have transportation. Go around to the back of the convention center because you'll see the crating. That everything that's built in the convention center, these huge, marvelous show booths, some of which are really large and extremely elaborate, the crates and the shipping stuff that they come in on is hidden back behind the convention center. And it's amazing. It's a city of boxes. Somebody could do a short film there. It'd be really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's I'm going to be there Sunday morning as well. I'm going to check in and then drop my main bag off. And I have one backpack that I'll keep with me. It has my laptop and things that I'm worried, my camera and stuff like that I'll carry around. Won't be a big deal.
Yeah, that's usually a good strategy. I mean, the bell captains are safe, and then when you get in your room, almost every room in Las Vegas has some sort of in-room safe. So if you've got a camera or something like that you absolutely cannot lose, it usually is big enough to handle a laptop.
Right.
So if you're concerned about that, you don't want to carry your laptop all day in a backpack.
Yep.
You can put it in your room safe and be comfortable there.
Absolutely. So
that's pretty normal.
So do you want to give out your room number and where you're staying?
I'm not registered yet, and I usually stay at a hotel that nobody else stays at. I mean, in the past, I have broken from that when there were people that I wanted to interact with a lot. And it's not that I don't want to do that, but I kind of split my brain into 3 or 4 different things typically at NAB.
Right.
If I'm working with a vendor, I've got that thing. I've got the press stuff that I'm doing, and then I've got personal stuff, including some of these evening things. They're just some groups. I've been going to NAB for, I guess it's close to 20 years now. So they're dear old friends that I, would go to Sunday night dinner at a particular place with and things like that.
Sure.
And let me reiterate that one more time. For those of you who might be watching this, you've never done NAB. My standard thing is that I, in my first maybe 5 or 6 years, thought it was about seeing things. And then I finally woke up and realized it's about meeting people. So literally have a strategy. If you want to maximize your use of your time at NAB, have a strategy for what are you going to do if you're on a bus going from your hotel to the convention center and you're sitting next to somebody, and just in the course of the conversation, you make a connection and you figure, this person could be really, useful to know for a long time. We're getting along and they're in my part of the business. And so how are you going to exchange things? I mean, business cards are kind of falling out of favor now. Are you going to use, what are you going to do? How are you going to trade information?
Yep.
They may have a BlackBerry. You may have a BlackBerry. They may have a not iPhone, one of the various forms of things. They may. So you may want to do that transfer. Well, you may want to practice how that works. You may want to, do you have some sort of URL that you can scratch on something and hand to them.
Right.
Just give a little thought to making connections.
Simple URLs. That's been my goal since I first started buying domains. Simple. No underscores or dashes where you have to stop and say something underscore. It just doesn't work when you're trying to pronounce it.
One of the strategies that I started doing, I say, do you have a card? And somebody would say, oh, yeah, I still have one. I say, hold it up for me.
Take a picture.
And I would just take a picture on my phone of the card in front of the person.
I do that. Yep.
And you learn those little things because then there's the visual trigger reminder of who I talked to, plus you're capturing the data.
Right. So where can people reach you if they want to ask you some questions or they want to
come to any of the Final Cut Pro 10 things, and I will be very visible, I think. I'm actually I'm doing the front of house it's not really hosting, but I'm greeting probably pretty much everybody as they come in to the Faster Together stage. So as you enter the hotel, I'm probably one of the first people you will see as you enter that evening event. And I'll be pretty prominent there. I haven't decided on my strategy yet for my contact stuff. I'm working on a new one and I thought, I got my old cards and stuff like that, but it seems so old-fashioned. There must be better ways.
Right, there certainly should be. So when I was talking to Mike Horton and Sam Messman last week, and Mike said that you're going to be selling popcorn at the.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. This is just fun. Now I'm going to be talking to people. That's the be all and end all. And I go out of my way. I do a lot of stuff online, and I am known for being relatively passionate, and even some would say very argumentative about the things that I believe in.
Sure.
And so a lot of people who have interacted with me on the web in that particular environment, I go out of my way to try to meet the ones, particularly people that I may not have gotten along with on the web and I've sparred with, because there's nothing like shaking somebody's hand, sitting across to them and reading the body language back and forth.
Sure. That
sometimes breaks down those artificial grumpy barriers that you find in your web communications. So I just like doing that. Now, sometimes it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Walked over and shaken hands with somebody who it appeared that I didn't like on the web, and I found out that we don't even really like each other very much for whatever reason. And that's okay.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Some people you get along with, some people you don't get along with.
Right, and that's okay. That's okay.
I agree.
Nobody's going to punch anybody. Everybody's going to get along. But, a remarkable number of those occasions have converted somebody who was a sparring partner on the web into a friend that I've had for years since. So that's part of the magic of something like NAB. Get out of cyberspace, get into meat space, and deal with people in a way that you can look them in the eye and decide, does this person have good ideas? Maybe I was completely misreading their tonality in what they wrote to me on the web, because they did not have a way to put into their textual communications the subtleties that would change them from being an adversary to a just debate partner, where the goal is for both of us to learn something from the other.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be learning stuff from each other at NAB for sure.
No, we always do.
Yeah, I'll be in contact with you Sunday just so we, touch base and everything, but I'll be getting in there Sunday morning before noon too.
Good. Okay. Well, yeah, I think we have enough connection there, so we'll ping each other. And
plenty. Absolutely. All right, Bill, this has been great, and I will, if I don't talk to you before, we might do another one of these NAB specific with a couple of people, yourself included, in the next week or so. But other than that, I will see you at NAB, and looking forward to it. FasterTogether.com is going to be the big thing for me.
Cool. Great to see you, Richard. Thanks for inviting me into this one. And yes, we will see each other, and I think be in the same rooms a significant amount of time.
Absolutely. As we have been for the last two.
Yeah, absolutely.
See you later.
Adios.